What up, folks? That's one of my favorite things to do. I'm super amped up. Not only is Zach a freaking legend, I love when I get the warm referrals from people that I trust and love myself. Who is Tyler from TSK DAO? He has become such a close buddy after becoming on this podcast. He speaks the world of you. Zach, welcome to the podcast. How are you feeling, brother?
Good. How are you doing?
Dude, I'm amped. I told you I'm totally amped. So like we do here, going to give you just a little updates about Mikey G, midlife, what's going on. I'll do a formal introduction of the man, the myth, the legend, Zach, and then we'll get right into the famous midlife crisis question. So as far as the weekly update, this is a huge week. We're already starting right now with this podcast, which is going to be magical. I already know. We have Mr. H coming on Wednesday morning. I am so dedicated. I will be waking up at 5:45 in the morning to do a podcast for an hour and a half and then go to work all day. That's how much I love doing this. And then Friday, I have an official Plague Space, usually every Friday at 2 p.m. PST. The big kahuna's coming on this Friday. Mr. Pons himself will be on the Plague Space podcast, space that I host. And for people that don't go to my space, all I do is replicate this podcast format. I've said this multiple times, and I'm not ashamed to say it. Zach, I'd love your input on this too. I hate spaces. I think most of them are worthless. I think a lot of people talk in circles. So I wanted to bring something to the space place and bring my flavor, and Pons coming on is going to be a fascinating conversation. What's your quick take on spaces, Zach? Am I right?
I think it really comes down to probably the vertical of the content. I've been part of really incredible spaces. I think it comes down to what you're following. If you're looking at maybe particularly Web3, then yeah, I would say that the quality is not quite there.
Yes.
But I think a lot of people are just not really listening to spaces like they used to. They're busy doing something else all day when it comes to Web3 and crypto and all that.
See, this is why I know it's going to be a fascinating conversation, because the insightful response that you just gave, it depends on the vertical. I would say a majority of Web3, not great. There are really good ones still. I'm not saying they all suck. I just personally don't like spaces. But you made a really interesting point. There are probably verticals out there that I've never listened to where spaces is a fantastic format, right? Web3 has adopted it. Do you have any categories where you think spaces are a great vertical of content?
So this is a little bit niche, but every week, all these mangas and all these animes, they have these leaks that come out, right? And when they air and they get released.
Yeah.
And suddenly we have what we call like anime Twitter, but it's crossed over with what we call Black Twitter. And that Black Twitter anime space is some of the best shit I've ever been in and participated in.
I'm going to have to show up.
Yeah. Dude,
I'm gonna have
really
to,
cool.
You're gonna have to let me know, because that sounds amazing. I'm totally in. There's a whole documentary on Black Twitter. I think it's on Hulu. I started watching. It's fascinating, absolutely fascinating. So already had a really fruitful conversation. We haven't even done the introduction. So the formal introduction for Zach, OG YouTuber. We're talking 2009, right? 2008, 2009.
2009.
2009. OG YouTuber with 10 million fans. That's not 10,000. That's not 100,000. That's 10 million followers on YouTube with, this is even more mind-blowing, 4 billion views. That is a shit ton of views, man. In addition, creator and producer of Yo Mama, Brody Fox, at Brody Fox. Anna Meme? Is that how you were going to pronounce it?
Yeah, you actually pronounced it. Most people do not. So congratulations.
See, this is what I do as a pro podcaster. I got to pronounce shit right and actually be able to comfortably talk and screw things up on camera. But I nailed it. Anna Meme and more. This dude produces and creates a lot of stuff. That's what it boils down to. And then finally, we will absolutely talk about this too. loves beer and also loves to smoke weed. Okay. Question about the weed situation. I have a sensitive throat. I can't really smoke weed. Do you ever do the edibles? Because there is nothing better in my mind. One Eddie, about 10 millis, and then one nice craft beer, and you're feeling real nice for the night. What are your thoughts there? Ever do that?
So I'm more of 100 milligrams type of guy.
Holy,
Yeah.
I did that once and I almost went to the hospital, called myself into the hospital.
Oh no. No, like if I want a good night's sleep where I can actually sleep and not wake up throughout the night, I need like a good 500.
What the fuck?
That's the best sleep I ever have in my life is when I do 500 milligrams.
Dude, if I did 500 milligrams, I would be going straight to the insane asylum. That is impressive, my man. That is impressive. So, did I do you justice on the introduction? Anything to add? Are you ready to get onto the show?
I think anything we could add is part of the show, right?
Exactly, it is. So let's do this. World famous midlife crisis question.
Mhm.
Zach, how'd you get the seat you're sitting in today? Please give me episode 1, 2, and 3. I cannot wait to hear this. To reiterate to the audience, episode 1 is childhood influences mindset. And what do you think impacted you to mold the way your mind thinks today? 2, your professional career, whether you had corporate or started to be an entrepreneur right away. I want to hear those skill sets that you learned, gained from there to get you into Web3 and talk about your Web3 journey. So let's have episode 1 and we will go from there, my man. Can't wait.
Okay. I guess this is where I dive in.
Yeah.
All right. So, I'll tell it to you the way I normally tell people, right? I mean, people like to talk about childhood and stuff, but I think a lot of people don't realize the way your brain works is pretty important.
Yep.
And for me, autism is like a pretty big facet of my personality. I'm technically on the spectrum, and it was one of those things that made sense after a while, but back in the 90s, people didn't really understand it. And then you mix
Right.
that in with traveling around the world. So I grew up in over 2 dozen countries.
Mm-hmm.
And so this culture and different experiences and different beliefs, but with also autism, you don't really speak with people. You
Right.
kind of you're kind of interpreting all the time.
Yeah.
You're trying to translate. To me, like the way I think and the way I speak are two different languages. And
Interesting.
when people speak to me, I got to translate it to the language of how I think. So I would say that's a pretty big facet of
Yeah.
you know
And
my
how
childhood.
I'm already gonna jump in because I think that's
Yeah.
really fascinating, right? Like that's almost like you said, you're learning 2 languages. You're trying you don't even probably realize when you're young. When at what point do you have any vivid memories or things that happened that made you think like, "Oh, I'm thinking a little bit differently than the people around me?"
Um. So I'm about to say something, and I'm going to say another thing. Um, Memories overall is like a pretty big difference that I've noticed that
Yeah,
I've been told by my family and my friends.
right.
And the fact is, I remember stuff from all the way up until like a few months old, and I mean like vividly.
That's
So
insane.
yeah, and I think a big thing that happened that I remember, and my family always joked about it to this day, is there was those little locks, those little hinge locks. It's like a little two-piece, and you just kind of slip it in, and it locks like a door.
Yeah, yeah.
So, when I was a kid, a baby, really in a crib, like learning how to walk,
Uh-huh.
I started breaking out of the bedroom,
Right.
and so the door was just open like this. So they put a little lock on it, and then it escalated to my family's point of view. They couldn't figure out, even though with the lock, how the fuck I was still getting out every day. Because like, there's no way he should be reaching this lock. It doesn't make any
Right.
sense. And then they decided to spy. Okay, we got to figure this out. And I remember this. What I would do is I would take a Sesame Street chair set, table set, and I would move it over and stack the chairs on top of the table and climb up
Yeah.
and then pull the curtain rod down. And then I would take it apart, restack the chairs up against the door, and climb all the way up and slip the curtain rod through the lock. And then I would somehow put it all back up, go back and do that, but stack another chair up and hook it all back up so they couldn't figure out how I was doing it. So I was covering my tracks too.
Right.
And to me, it was just fun. It was fun. Like, cool, a puzzle.
Yeah.
But
that's amazing. How old were you at this point?
God, probably, I don't know. Like, when do you usually like walk? Like a year and a half?
Year and a half. Year and a half. Sometimes closer to 2, but like, I have 11-month-old and he's getting close to walking. So I would
say maybe around there, been walking for a moment type of thing. Yeah.
Right. So that's interesting. I don't think I haven't like personally grew up. None of my friends had any form of autism. I think one or two of my bosses did, but what I understand is it can come in many forms, right? Of like you said, vivid memories was part of yours. What else from this childhood perspective? So you're starting to have these vivid memories. I think you said you're traveling a lot and you're not very social at that point. How about what were you into? If you're traveling all the time, what did fascinate you that you got really, really passionate about as you were growing up?
Well, so I think there's a misconception sometimes with autism. So as you said, it is kind of like, as we all say, it's a spectrum, right? So I have always had like a socialization aspect to my autism because I was always curious. And I think a lot of it came down to just being exposed to animals very early on. Yeah, because I lived on a farm for like the first 4 years of my life with my grandparents and my mom.
Yeah.
And it was really cool because you kind of learn, if you're socializing with animals.
Yeah.
Socializing with people's, I don't know. It's not really that too far off for a kid to kind of be like they're all the same.
Right.
Like it's all fun. Everybody's fun. Everyone's going to give you a good time type of thing. Get a good experience. I would say the opposite because when you move around the world, you have to be taught how not to do that.
Right.
Very quick. Very, very, very quick. Because I got, look, there's been a couple times in my life where, some dude picked me up and tried to take me off, down the street. There was a case in, I think it was Bermuda, where we had a neighbor, and we ended up moving to a house pretty quick after this. We had a neighbor in an apartment complex that tried to get me into his apartment.
Good Lord.
And he nearly did. So it was like all these things where I think as a kid, you kind of, it's not even with autism, with or without. I think as a kid moving around a lot, you're taught stranger danger. But in other countries, you're taught you're gonna fucking die, you dumb little shit. You didn't listen to me, you autistic little fuck. Understand what we're trying to tell you.
Yeah,
and that's kind of the funny thing about it.
That's super interesting. So, the socialization thing, as far as like this creativity is run a majority of your life, right? Probably even before YouTube. When did that start? Anything in the childhood that started this kind of creative mindset or intuition for drawing animation? What did that look like?
I think the story that really is often told is, from my perspective, you're a kid, you play with things, you play with toys, and you make believe shit. And cartoons and toys are very much heavily tied into each other. Cartoons are a marketing arm for toys.
Right.
So I think if you're having a really fun life with toys and you're just keep playing with toys, and then you get to that point where you start drawing, you start to kind of naturally try to want to build your own worlds, your own characters. It's like, hey, I want to play make-believe, but I want to take it and produce that shit. I want to make it a little bit more real in some way. And I think that's how creativity really starts for young people.
Yeah, no, that's
It's
beautiful. And I actually talked about this a couple podcasts ago. My mother-in-law has been a lifelong teacher, and we talk about one of the childhood development things of creativity is when you're reading, right? And you start visualizing the worlds and the words are coming to life and you can picture that in your mind. And that's like a huge moment for starting to develop that creative brain, which is interesting because you're kind of saying the same thing, but except you're drawing to create these worlds. So what I'm hearing is it's not only necessarily just the drawing, it was more you wanted to manifest these worlds and this imagination through drawing. Does that sound right?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
you know.
And so did that kind of consume you as you were growing up, or did you end up getting social or just moving around all the time? You didn't have that opportunity for the let's play sports, let's do band, let's do, whatever else that may be. What did that look like?
I would say there's like two stages, maybe three to that. So
Okay.
for me, it wasn't always just drawing. I would, um, the stories that my parents always told, my grandparents, my aunts and uncles, they even siblings, they would go, you give Zach a toy, a Lego. He didn't look at the instructions. You built it by looking at the box. And,
Yeah.
get a couple things wrong, but it looked exactly the same. Or
Right.
puzzles, Rubik's Cubes. Um, I would take, we moved a lot. So we had cardboard boxes we were throwing out. So I
Hmm.
turned those and cut them and built puppet sets out of them so
Right.
that I could pull puppets and like pull levers and shit and make like puppets pop up in different houses and stuff.
Wow.
I would do anything I could. And I think moving a lot, you and wanting to socialize, you learn how to socialize pretty quick. You learn how to make
Right.
friends quick.
Right.
Um, and then I would say in high school, I went to about, I think three different high schools.
Uh-huh.
And then the high school I graduated from, I was there the longest. But throughout my high schools, I just always been hyperactively involved in everything.
Yeah.
I would treat high school like a project. Like I want to come here and play with the school.
Yeah.
I want to,
Interesting.
I want to see, I end up becoming like very involved in like all the student government activities. I end
Yeah.
up developing a new form of student government at the school
Mhm.
that handled media relationships because I was causing the news to always come to the school.
Yeah.
Because I was very, very good at creating a social awareness on
Yeah.
everything at the school,
Yeah.
and things of that nature.
So what's interesting to me is I keep on hearing this kind of like you're treating things as almost games, and you're treating things as an experience, I think is what I'm getting at, right? You thought of them on how you can have this area of play. It's almost like you're playing and what
Yeah,
I'm
something like
trying
that.
to get at that, like, because the way you just said how you dealt with high school is really interesting to me.
Well,
So go
I
ahead.
think the thing is that you're kind of taught you're moving a lot. You're
Right.
moving. You're gonna move. You're gonna move. You're gonna move. And I'm like, okay, well, how do I gain some sort of ability to learn the most I can? How do
Gotcha.
you learn? How do you gain experience? How do you gain awareness? And for me, it was more so, okay, I'm here. Like when I went to high school in Georgia and, graduated middle school in Georgia because we settled back in
Yeah.
right towards the end of my middle school years. Um, Basically, it was this idea of how do I gain as much experience as I possibly can from moving so much. I don't want to slip in and out. I am learning things as I learn things. When you move from a country to a country to a country to a country,
Right.
all around the world, and then you settle and start going in and out of the American school system every so often, you realize every time you came back to America,
Yeah.
they don't know what the fuck the world is. They don't understand anything.
Right.
And you're just there to challenge and push that as much as you want to.
Yeah.
It's
No, I
like,
love. Go
yeah.
ahead.
No,
No,
that's pretty much it.
I love that. That's a great insight. Yeah, kind of answered my next question, which was, I'm sure at the time, maybe not, but when you're young and you're constantly moving around, that's got to be frustrating. Maybe you felt anger, you were annoyed, but looking back as older Zach, what are so you just listed one thing. You looking back, I think took opportunities of that change to learn new things, which is an awesome way to apply it. Anything else there looking back and you're like, as annoying as that could have been, this was a huge asset for me because of what? XYZ.
Yeah, I would say probably, I don't know. Things are annoying, but I don't really think about it. Like,
Yeah.
I don't check it off in my brain and go, "Hey, that's that," I don't remember. Like,
Right.
yeah, something annoyed me today. I remember what annoyed me today or this week. But like growing up, I don't know. I just let shit go.
Yeah.
That's the thing. You got to learn to let shit go pretty quick.
And
So,
And I think that could be a product of, you moving a lot and having to experience that. The let shit go is huge, right? And to be able to learn that at a young age is super, super impactful. As far as before we kind of move into getting into high school, this has already been a fascinating conversation. And thank you for sharing, like just being intimate about the way your mind works. I think it's important because I always say this: somebody's going to watch this that can relate to your mind and your mindset, and then see the things that you've done and accomplished, and it could be really impactful for them. So I really appreciate you being open about everything. My last question before we kind of get to the high school, college, more professional career, as far as people and during that time, whether it be friends, family, anything that stood out that had an impact that helped kind of mold that mindset. And if no, totally cool. We can move on.
um, I think it's an amalgamation of so many people. I
I like
think
that.
y the fact is that my mom has a large family, and
Mhm.
so we're also a very private family at the same
Yeah.
time. So I'm
Yeah.
happy to talk about myself, but I always have to be careful about these little
Totally cool.
details.
Yep.
But what I can say is a very large family, and I mean large, probably just about as close to as many siblings as countries I lived in. And
Wow.
so because of that, we've had so many different people in our family.
Hmm.
And I would say that I've learned to kind of understand what it meant to have respect.
Mm.
I understood what it meant to have common courtesy,
Mhm.
self awareness,
Mhm.
um, the ability to put others before yourself. I would say to many extents, even the people that influenced me, the lessons that they taught me was very much amplified in other countries or by reflection of the places I lived in.
Right.
So when
Right.
people talk about like be grateful for what you have, I'm like, you have no fucking idea how bad it can get.
Yeah. Right.
Um, when people tell me to appreciate life, I'm like, you have no fucking idea how bad it can get. Like
Yeah.
you have this very intense childhood with a large family that kind of reflects back on you, and as you grow up over the years, um, you learn you kind of become your own person,
Yeah.
but by pulling in so many different ideologies throughout your family, and
Yeah.
then the world kind of helps it to amplify. And then with just the way my brain works, I try to translate it, and I'm always constantly pulling it apart and putting that together.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, that's the best way I can kind of bring that around.
No, that's beautiful. And I think one of the things I take away, I've had people on here that grew up in places where they didn't have freaking clean water, right? Dirt
Hmm.
roads, and literally lived in like mud huts. And, they somehow made it uh, to the US and, very successful entrepreneurs. The
Oh
one
yeah.
thing that you said though is you experienced that, right? Because it's different for someone like me where I feel like I was, very fortunate. I didn't grow up super rich, but I grew up middle class, right, in America. White dude in America. Like, I have a I in the world spectrum, I hit the lottery in the situation that I had, right? So when you say having that perspective, I tell myself that, right? I'm like, I need to be fortunate, but I don't actually have context. So what I heard you say is having that context is even more powerful. And I know it is because once you talked about that, you just rattled off like a million things that are so beneficial with is, the self-awareness, be kind, respect, understanding all of these principles through these myriad of different experiences that you had. So the way that you put that was beautiful, man. I really appreciate you sharing that with me. Uh, Going kind of forward to high school. So we understand we've got this picture of you know, you're thinking a little bit different than other people. You are getting comfortable with change. You're experiencing a ton of things, and you're starting to get interested in creating and building these worlds through drawing. Take us through kind of the high school, and did you go to college? What did that area of your life look like?
So this is where it's going to get a little bit more interesting.
No,
Because
what you just shared was fascinating. I think having that context is critical. So I
yeah.
was very very fascinated, and we've got triple digit people watching us, so they're into it too.
Well, awesome. No, I appreciate. I it's gonna seem like a shift, but I'll try to explain where this comes from. So basically, I was groomed for politics. That was pretty much what I've always experienced throughout my life.
Hmm.
Um, and because of that, I was very much pushed towards different activities in school.
Right.
Everything from, well, let me put it this way. I basically got identified in high school as somebody that should be pushed towards politics because of different positions that my family members had, different
Yeah.
influences, and then they kind of said, "Hey, look, this is my so and so, my family. I want you to look at them, see what they're doing," and then that began to kind of get, "Oh, cool. This is somebody who went to etiquette school. This is
Hmm.
somebody who family hosted UN diplomats. This
Yeah.
is somebody who comes from like a pretty secure like family that we already have knowledge on,
Hmm.
um, because all the different projects around the world and stuff, and for telecommunications and shit. And basically, because of that, I was told, hey, you should do as much as you can, and we'll put you on the right programs. You show us what you can do in high school, and we'll show you what we'll give you for your
Interesting.
education. And so I went and did everything from Interact. Interact was a volunteer program, so I produced events, charity events in high school. I also participated in radio and newspaper. So I hosted a radio show at high school. I ran my own section in the newspaper. I even did like a monthly comic for the newspaper. I was an editor for a section, so like I learned how
Hmm.
to go out and get advertisement, aka sponsorships.
Yeah.
I also quickly communicated and started creating like a kind of committee or a body that would
Yeah.
go directly to the high school principal
Hmm.
and go around student government because they didn't want to do that. And I'm like, you need to do it or I'm going to do it. And so I
Right.
went and did it. And then I participated in a program called Teen Court.
Yep.
Teen Court, pretty simply, is these are your fellow peers in the county school system that have admitted guilt, and part of their plea bargain is they're going to present their case or present themselves in a court, an actual courthouse, but
Yeah.
made up of your high school peers.
Right.
So your high school peers throughout all these different schools in the county, um, would serve as jury, defense, and prosecution. And I did defense once and knocked it out. It was pretty easy shit. But I wanted to do jury duty because I realized this is where it really mattered.
Right.
And I got to the point where I began to realize there was a disparity of who was coming into this program. You kind of knew the demographics in the area. You knew exactly how many type of people there were.
Yeah.
By percentage. And then you realize, okay, I'm seeing this, but I'm not going to be biased about it, but I'm also taking note of it.
Right.
And then I noticed a case that came in, and it was a Black student that had moved in from Atlanta. So I was kind of semi-familiar with that type of temperature in Georgia, if you will. And this is down in Florida, by the way. And so he came in, and within the first semester, not only was he getting bullied like crazy by these 3 or 4 other white students, but he had mentioned about the racial slurs and stuff as well.
Right.
No one did anything. And look, point is, we got his case. He was a better fighter. That's what it came down to.
Mm-hmm.
And he eventually defended himself.
Right.
And so I started pulling all the records. Like, we ended up moving a case to the following week or following 2 weeks because we do every other week. I wanted to dive deeper into this case. I'm like, I want the report. I want the records. I want every fucking thing I can get my hands on right now because where are these other students? Are they coming to teen court? No, they weren't they weren't charged. What's going on?
Yeah.
So that really bothered me. And so I began to get the records, and I realized what the full story was. And I looked up the law. You know, we had teachers that worked with us that specialized. You know, there were law teachers. And what we did is we went back out and we overturned his conviction.
That's awesome.
And we started to do that on not a regular basis, but it started to become hey, we are going to do this because we recognize there is a flaw in the system.
Right.
And we're not going to just do it because of any sort of particular whatever. We're just we're here to be fair.
Because it's the right thing to do, right?
Yeah.
You're doing the right thing to do. And this is, I mean, vivid. I totally feel that you think in vivid memories, right? Because you're out of all the guests that I've had on, that kind of the description and how you talk about each instance is solid, like really good detail. So I appreciate that. One thing that you said that I think is really interesting to me is you had family members that, you know, had done things in the past, and you were kind of being set up or groomed for this kind of political life. What at that time, were you totally into having to do that, or were you begrudgingly doing it because it was kind of like you were being groomed? What did that look like? Because I'm always interested in, for instance, I really want my son to surf and play golf, but I don't want to force him to do it because I want him to do it. So I'm interested in that kind of aspect. What was that like for you?
That was actually something that my parents knew a lot about how the world worked.
Right.
And it's stuff like you wouldn't think of. Like, back in the day, if I told anybody any of the stuff that I was told as a kid, people thought you know, pretty crazy.
Right.
But then we learned over the last couple of decades, like, no, a lot of this shit is real. So I think because of that, my parents were always concerned about me entering that type of world to any degree. Because policy making, government, politicians, anything of that nature, if you're good at it, you're gonna get up there pretty quick. And so there was a lot of people that believed in me. And so what happened is I had a lot of fun with it. To me, it was a chance to actually have a system that would let me do that thing I wanted to do. You know, push the boundaries of something, right? go in and quote unquote play with something. But when
Yeah.
I think of playing with something, I don't think of it as like a sociopathic, sadistic type of thing.
Right.
I
Right.
think of it
Right.
as like, no, there's a puzzle here, and I want
Yeah.
to figure out how do people work, and what's the best way that people work together, and how do we create better communication, and how do we solve issues that we recognize, but we were always bitching about it and we don't do anything about it. And for
Mm,
me, I was giving this motivation and this encouragement and all these different pathways to make it influence my community. And so my parents were probably very concerned. They just wanted to protect me. But on the same token, everybody encouraged it. And so we kind of steadily went, just kind of moved. I didn't know how much they were concerned about it. I didn't know what type of scholarships letters were coming in. It got to the point where like aerospace universities, people that were like, hey, we want your son to study aerospace. Come bring him here. We want to interview him right now. And it was like, what the fuck? My parents, they were kind of like overwhelmed by it. Whereas for me, I just thought it was fun that
yeah.
I had all these opportunities.
So what I'm hearing again is you're turning things into yet another, like you said, game puzzle. And what is really interesting about your story so far is I haven't heard a lot of uh oh, I don't want to do this, or this is annoying. It is, hey, I'm presented this situation and I'm going to turn it as an opportunity to learn and grow. Does that sound right and appropriate?
Yeah, I would say that's pretty straightforward.
Yeah. And why do you think, because this is a skill, or not even a skill. This is a viewpoint I think a lot of people don't have. What is your advice to people that are struggling to play, to learn, to grow? Because I think a lot of people struggle from that. And you seem like from a young age have already become a master at it and you continue to do it. What is your kind of general thoughts on that topic? I'd be fascinated to hear what you have to say.
I would say, the more I've engaged with people just across throughout my professional career, right? This,
Hmm.
I can kind of get a sense for kind of segue into this to some point. But as you kind of notice over the years, you realize that most people do not have a certain sense of honesty with themselves.
Yes.
And I don't mean like be positive, be negative. It's not really about how you feel. At some point, yeah, you got to be excited about something, but you also got to be honest if you're really fucking bad at something. You got to
Right.
be really honest with yourself if you fucked up. You
Yep.
got to be honest with yourself if you're pretty fucking badass at the same time.
Yeah.
You just gotta, if you want the world to be honest with you, you got to be honest with yourself and present your honest self.
Right. I love that insight, and it kind of segues into just the topic of self-awareness, right? How do you think you accomplished self-awareness? Was this a slow burn over time? Did you have an aha moment? Because my situation, I numbed myself till my late 30s through my parents got divorced when I was really little. My, family has a little thing with alcohol, did a lot of that too. And not till I went through a traumatic major depressive order did I come out the other side and finally had a conversation in the mirror being like, Mike, like this is who you are. Get your shit together. It took a long time for me to get there. I'm interested in your journey of self-awareness. What does that look like?
It's not really a single moment,
Yeah,
and it's not something that happens overnight, nor
right.
is it a uphill battle. I
Mhm.
think the reality is, I mean, there's a lot of different fucking people on this planet. A lot of different things are happening.
Yep.
And we're constantly being challenged by um, the external world that's just full of chaos and yet chaotic rhythm.
Yeah.
I mean, look, it's this. I think when you get older, you kind of also get more exposed to it in a certain way. You start to learn, like, oh shit, this can actually fuck with my life and day to day life. Inflation and shit, things like that. It's not even politics.
And
It's
so,
just it's
sorry
just
about that.
it's all good. No, I would say there's always these things that we're dealing with, and when you deal with shit, you either deal with it the right way or the wrong way, or you could have dealt with it a better way because other people were dealing with shit.
Right.
And every time you deal with somebody, you are given a new experience, and you have to figure out, did I handle that correctly? Was I a good person with that person?
Yep.
You're just constantly hit with new challenges in life.
Yeah. No,
new people in life. Yeah.
And that's I haven't heard many people describe it that way. And what I'm really getting from what you said was you're taking your experiences and learning from them, but then also molding that learning into who you are, what you believe in, and how you act in these different situations. And that is true self-awareness too. I don't know why mine came all at once. I think it was because what is an interesting, the brain always tries to keep you safe, right? And for a long time in my life, I think my self-awareness was actually my brain putting things so deep down inside that I didn't have to think or learn about self-awareness. I was just numbing it, right? Until it all came out to a head and it was like a volcano all at once. And it's just a different way of getting there. But I really like, and I think your version is something people should be thinking about. It's, you hear this a lot of like, oh, I'm not good at anything. I don't know what to do. Well, to your point, find different people, not just people that are near you or your friends. Go out, try to experience new things, and then from those experiences, take those in and learn how you want to evolve as a person. So I think the way you said that is really beautiful. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say I humbly appreciate that, and I just want to give the stream a little retweet.
Oh yeah,
I didn't do that.
Definitely retweet. We got the viewers just constantly going up because it's already a fascinating conversation. So take me through kind of the college. I've got a very good sense of
no college.
Great. And so at that college time, you're getting out of the high school time, you're getting really interested. The court thing was fascinated. But again, the big thing that I'm hearing is you take every opportunity and you try to find that puzzle. You're interested in fixing things and figuring out solutions, whereas other people would say, that's too complex or that's too much work. I don't want to do it. I love that about this narrative so far. So take us past high school then. What happens?
Well, here's how it pretty much worked. There was that whole political thing escalated.
Yeah.
Ended up going to a program called Boys State. Basically, I think it's the 48 states in America, continental, give or take, that accumulate 500 boys and 500 girls on 2 different weeks. 1 week here, 1 week there. And these are the top 500 boys in Florida, which is probably not much, jokes aside. But basically, it's like, yo, these are the top 500 boys in Florida. They're the most talented and educated, and like they scored high and all these things.
Yeah, real quick though, how are they defining that? Wasn't there a documentary called Boys State that talked about this?
Oh, was there?
I think there might have been a Boys State documentary, but
shit,
I could be wrong. I could be wrong. I'll look it up. It rings a bell. But criteria, I'm interested in what this looks like.
It's all based off recommendation. And the thing is you got to realize I've had long hair since I was like maybe 15, 16 years old.
Right.
So my no one thought this was ever going to be a thing. My family was like, if you're going to do this, you're going to cut your hair. I'm like, no, I ain't going to cut my damn hair. You know, they're like, well, you ain't going to get anywhere with it. I'm like, nah, we'll see.
Yeah.
So anyways, basically the guy who was in charge of it, who was positioned to, it's like a chain of type of command, right? 500 boys across Florida. So however many counties, how many schools. I was personally, I guess, someone on the school board, someone somewhere. There was like phone calls that were made that said, hey, who is this student in your school? What, you know, you need to promote this student up to Boys State, you know? And it was also approached with letters of recommendation behind the scenes from like different members of my family. I didn't know this until like years later. And so there's a different process for everybody. They're looking for the 500 best, period. The 500 people that are most likely to serve your government at some point in time. That's how, and Bill Clinton and George Bush went through this. Yeah. And then after Boys State, you basically learn how to like do the whole political process in the state level in a week. Just like fucking role play, man. You're doing Dungeons and Dragons IRL, but with politics. You're writing speeches. Only slept 14 fucking hours the entire week.
Wow.
You know, because you're campaigning. You're like, I'm gonna get as fucking high up there as I can.
Yeah. And by the way, there is a documentary came out 2020 called Boys State. I knew I saw that. Dude, this is fascinating. I didn't even know this existed.
Yeah. And then there's another thing. It's called Boys Nation. What? You go up there and you learn the whole fucking Senate process. You've been identified as somebody who could potentially be a fucking senator one day.
Wow.
And then you go up to DC for a week. And I'm like, holy shit. My autistic Jesus looking ass got picked. All right.
I love that. I mean, you're literally describing the recruiting process for sports, but this is politics.
Yeah.
This is insane. Okay, so do you get to the nation or you stop at the state? So you're now in Boys Nation.
And that's a whole different fucking experience.
Right. How old are you at this point?
17.
17.
Yeah.
All right. So this is now your education. You're going through Boys State. You're in Boys Nation.
This is going to determine your pathway to college and everything. Right.
And so take me through Boys Nation then.
Pretty fucking intense. And
I can imagine.
And I'm telling you, you're gonna this because they're the top of the country. You're realizing, holy shit, there's a lot of arrogant fucking pricks here. There's a lot of really weird shit. There's a lot of really weird beliefs. I don't know if I can deal with these dumb fucks.
Right.
You know, I really, because there's a part of me that thinks, yeah, consensus, yeah, compromise. But then there's just some really crazy fanatical beliefs. And you're realizing that's in politics. Okay.
Can you describe any of those or you don't want to go there?
I want to be respectful to an extent because
totally cool.
Because at the end of the day, Boys Nation was a very important experience for me.
Yeah.
You know, you do a lot of great work and you have to kind of respect that.
Yeah.
And, you know, the thing is you come out of that situation with letters of recommendation, colleges knocking on your door, people saying, hey, why don't you go full ride here, full ride there?
Yeah.
And it was like, I could potentially go to Columbia or NYU and have it fully paid for. I can go to the Naval Academy if I needed to.
Yeah.
You know, whatever's going to take me to my next political career, I had letters of recommendation out of the ass.
Yeah.
I had the fucking paper for it from high school, just for all the shit I did. My grades weren't always the greatest, but I had the highest letters of recommendation. And the fact that I had autism was like, okay, this might be somebody a little bit different.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So real quick question to insert here. You know, the cliche, your network is your net worth, right? Yeah. How much did you see that play in this situation opposed to just sheer intelligence? Was it a combination of both? Was everybody in this program, you know, top SAT scores, or were there a subset of like, okay, this person's here just because they know the right people? What did that look like?
Both.
Yeah.
Both. Yeah,
that's
because you there was one guy that set off a smoke bomb
Yeah.
as a prank, and then on the other end of the spectrum, because obviously, if you're setting off smoke bombs, what the fuck are you doing here?
Yeah.
Then on the other side of the spectrum, you got the most hardcore badass Chinese violinist you could have ever imagined at that age.
Wow.
And I remember like really sticking an impression in my mind because like he was playing for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It was like his audition of why I'm pretty fucking badass.
Right. Right. So kind of give me the more TD. I always have to say this too long, didn't I? TLDR of the rest of the kind of the boys nation. And what I'm interested in when you go through this and what you decide to do after is what were those big takeaways in your mind? It's super intense. You're meeting tons of different people. You said there's some wacky beliefs, but you had to have gotten some pretty valuable skill sets through this time period. What did that look like?
I would say that's probably the first time in my life, because you got to realize when I'm saying like Boys Nation, I slept a little bit more, maybe like 22, 23 hours in that week.
Yeah.
But I did not sleep.
Right.
I literally cut out 4 or 5 nights of sleep each go around. It was around. It felt like a boxing match, but it was really exhilarating because it was the first time in my life that I actually felt that I could pour everything into something 24/7. You know, and that this was going to have a major fucking impact. It wasn't some school and wasn't some tests in high school. I'm literally speaking to a senator. It wasn't me making friends with Billy and Johnson because he has a hot sister or something. It's me, whatever, making friends with this person. This what do they call them? Recruiters. There's like certain people that have these roles, these staffers that have these roles, because like you're not only meeting the senator, you're also meeting staffers and people that have these connections.
Yeah.
And they're going, hey, I know so and so, and they can get you into Columbia instantly, and everything will get paid for, type of thing. And it's pretty fucking. But you don't get that opportunity until you put it all in there. So it's like a game that instantly rewards you. Like fucking, it's like, you think crypto's crazy? Imagine doing that shit with politics.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. So you really learned just how to put your all into something, and you did that. Yeah. So what was the product? Because you're obviously not in politics, unless I don't know something. Where was the transition? What happened? How did you get to this entrepreneurship spirit that you are now known for?
It's kind of funny. Because you got to realize we're talking politics, right?
Yeah.
But I was also a guy, talking about toys and cartoons.
Yeah, right.
So I think for me, the big thing that keeps coming up is how can I play a game?
Yeah.
How can I be successful at a game? How can I have fun with a game? How can I influence people positively for this game I play?
Yeah.
And how do I feel at the end of it? Right. And I realized politics wasn't really my thing at the time. Maybe one day that could change.
Yeah.
But for me, what was fascinating was YouTube, because I was not only looking at YouTube at the time and knew how to like make a YouTube video and get some views like there in high school, because I made videos before 2009 and I was able to get some good views on YouTube when I was like, 16, 17 years old. And I deleted those videos years and years ago.
Right.
So I was always in the back of my head like, oh, YouTube's kind of cool. And then suddenly I heard on the news, oh, you can make money off of YouTube. I'm like, cool. Yeah. And then I had a friend of mine in high school that was making money off of YouTube. I'm like, holy shit. Cool. And then I'm thinking, you know what? Social media is pretty fucking badass.
Yeah.
I don't have to do politics to be influential. I could influence through social media if I really want to be a good influence.
Yeah.
If I really want to play a game, social media seems like it's going to be a forever game.
Right.
It's it was also a way to reconnect with the world and not be stuck in an American-centric ideology, which is American politics.
Interesting.
Unless you're dealing with foreign policy, but even then, that's American ideology.
I love it. And so, question here, because
Mhm.
you've said this a couple times. You want to use your experience, and now you found social, but you want to do it for good. Where does that come from? Because there's a lot of people that have gone through your situation and could have used it for money, power, wealth, a lot of things that I think are wrong in the world because of the ego and because of making maybe some poor choices. Where does that idea of good? You're obviously checking ego at that point, or did you struggle with ego? Because you're obviously trying to do the right thing, which is really interesting to me. So where does that come from?
Well, I think we put too much emphasis on good, right? Because you can't do good shit until you make money.
Hmm.
So, in my opinion, it was all about how do I entertain? How do I make jokes, have a good time?
Yeah.
Um, and at the same time, I've always kind of approached it from the sense of, okay, well, as my numbers started to go up, I became, I sort of had that reflection of, okay, I want to be a little bit more aware of what I'm putting out there. And then as you kind
Right.
of get older, you're going on 19, 20, 21, you
Mhm.
start to have a little bit of a deeper reflection.
Yep.
And I think part of me kind of got caught up in American culture and humor to an extent
Yep.
that I realized that social media was really going to be like a larger global conversation.
Mhm.
And I was like, you know what? Even though I'm playing like a satirical YouTuber, like a satirical version of myself on YouTube, I want to at least put a little bit more thought and effort behind the content I'm doing. So, like, yeah, for me, good is part of the product. It's like a byproduct, as they say.
Yeah.
But I'm going in with the intention of I'm going to make money. I'm going to end up doing really well. And at some point, yeah, there's going to be influence. So, yeah, I'll put out good messages out there. I'll let people know, yeah, the guy who makes you mama jokes, yeah, that might be the biggest fucking prick in the world, but he's actually like a pretty chill guy. And he
Yeah.
actually put a lot of thought and effort behind like making sure that this wasn't a step backwards.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like yeah, it's misogynistic, but there's also some weird, oddly heart behind it, and
Yeah.
it kind of hooks you in. You're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna listen to a stupid joke, and you're like, holy shit, no, this is kind of hooking me in, and this is
Yeah.
kind of like making me realize that people can be complex, and it's like, yeah,
Mhm.
it's you gotta use comedy, you gotta use humor to hook people in, and I think the best good you can do in the world is to get people to think a little bit more and to think more beyond the way they used to think. And I don't mean like wake up to like the Matrix or something. Fuck that shit. I'm
Yeah.
talking about just realize people are complicated and not
Yeah.
everything is so straightforward and it's not so black and white or red and blue in this season. There's a
Yeah.
lot of complexities to life and you
I
gotta approach it.
I love that you say that because we talk about that a lot on this show, right? One of the things that I think social media has done bad is they portray a lot of things as black and white, and life is different, many shades of gray. And you that's really interesting that that's the tool that you're using, and that is absolutely a way to get back as good, right? Because when people think good, they're like, oh, we're going to make a ton of money and give back money, and that's what the form of good is. But
Hmm.
to make people think is probably one of the most powerful things of good. Hence why I like to do this shows, because people now have a slice of your mind and might start thinking differently because of what you said.
Well,
So go
let
ahead.
me kind of give a good example if you don't mind.
Yeah, go for
Very
it.
quick. So we have your mama, right?
Yep.
That's where we kind of get into career a little bit, but we're segueing into it. What type of asshole tells you mama jokes and thinks it's funny?
Yeah.
That's kind of the whole baseline of this character that we made. So we created this parody YouTuber named Brody Fox. 6'2", blonde hair, buff dude,
Yeah.
pink polo shirt. But then we also made it more complicated. He's actually adopted by two gay dads.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like, well, hang on, what?
Yeah.
And it
Right.
really kind of just made our fans just go back and re-examine everything that we've ever done with the series. And
Mhm.
yeah, it's kind of a fun thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I think of Archer and just the nuances that they put in that show and different things like that. But so I'm interested, before we get to Web3,
hmm,
where believe it or not, we've already talked for an hour, and I feel like we have so much to talk about still. Do you
yeah.
have a hard stop? I want to be cognizant and respectful of your time.
No, uh,
Okay.
yeah, no. I mean, maybe like a wine break, but otherwise pretty good.
Do you want to go get that wine right now?
Mm, let's wait until we get to part three.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, good
So
segue.
let's go to kind of this part two. What I'm interested in is like you said, and I love how you frame this. You played a game in this part. You were like, "Hey, social media is interesting. I want to use this as a game and crack this code." When you start that journey, how much is driven by you just figuring out how the algorithm works versus you trying to figure out what creative resonates with you and where you want to spend your time creating? I'm interested in those kind of two things that you have to think about as growing a YouTube channel. What did that experience look like?
I didn't do any of that first.
I love it.
You
So what
know,
did you do?
well, think about it. This came out of politics, right?
Mhm.
Learn how to fucking network, get letters of recommendation.
I love it.
So before I even uploaded my first YouTube video under my YouTube career, because
Yep.
obviously I fucked around on YouTube as like a teenager, I actually made deals with YouTubers like Shane Dawson, where because remember I went to high school with another YouTuber, and he was up there.
Yep.
And then I was like, "Hey man, I really like your shit. This is really cool. I'm gonna do it too." He's like, "Really? Cool." So I started drawing all of his friends up from YouTube, and
Yep.
I knew he would share them with his friends. And then suddenly they're like, "Hey, can you do my merch?" I'm like, "Yeah. How much?" "Well, I'll tell you what. I'll take this little bit amount of money, and instead of royalties, you're going to promote the shit on my YouTube channel when I start."
I love it.
And I locked all those fuckers down a pipeline.
Yeah.
And then I dropped my first YouTube video. St. Dawson shouted me out. Um, really, I know people have different opinions about him, but he helped me out, and he would always say like, "Hey, you did it yourself too." But I lined up a lot of those YouTube shout outs, and I got YouTube partnership pretty quick. First month of YouTube partnership after being on YouTube for like 2 weeks, I made $20. Then I made
Nice.
$200 next week. I mean next month, and then I made $2,000 the following month. So this is March, and then by October of that year, I was making 5 figures a month.
It's insane. That's insane. So how much do you attribute to timing there too? Because being
Oh yeah.
early, I think, is a big deal. What do you think about that?
I mean, people think timing is all about timing in the sense of luck. I think people don't realize that timing means understanding the landscape for the time.
Mhm.
It's a different
Mhm.
landscape.
Yep.
You know, people would think it's harder today to start social media. I would argue it's even easier. I can start anything today on TikTok, get to a few 100,000 followers. So it's not timing, it's about understanding.
Yeah. I Dude, you are speaking language that people need to hear, and I think it's beautiful. And I think the one thing that we talk about a lot here too, and I have seen growth uh, exponentially by doing what we did before the show. We had a half-hour call. We shared our stories, we shared our thoughts, and that is probably the best thing I've done over the last 2.5 years. I have had hundreds of calls with people. And even if it just ends in now I know someone else in the space, that connection and that simple conversation is extremely powerful. And it's really cool to hear you say that's how you started. So take me for this. Will be the last thing, and then we can do a wine break because I actually have to go to the bathroom too. I've been crushing water all day. Kind of the evolution of that YouTube. Any nuances? What I'm interested in, like when you felt like, oh, this makes sense to pivot. You got notoriety very quickly, and how kind of the evolution of the thought process of the content was it always a product of trying to just gain the YouTube system and get more followers, or was it really hammering down on like this content I'm passionate about and I want to make more of it?
It's both, because you got to realize that animation, it doesn't matter how passionate you are. It's about what YouTube wants. YouTube
Yes.
has certain metrics they're trying to hit, and so you got to play by their algorithm. And animation is expensive. I'm telling
Yes.
you, it is so fucking expensive. Most
Yeah.
people, I'm telling you, there are people in this space that have millions of dollars, and when I tell them what the cheapest budget is for animation to like execute their vision but still make it reasonable, they don't want to do it because they think it's going to be cheaper. And I tell them, my man, it doesn't work that way. You have no
Right.
idea what the fuck animation is.
Yeah.
But then I
Yeah.
would say, like, you know, that's an animation perspective. From my perspective of everything I was involved in, you know, I wasn't just a content creator. I was on the other side of the industry. You know, when I went in Machinima, if anyone remembers that name, I was one of their first
Yes.
I was
I
one of their
spent I when I worked at Geico, we spent a lot of money with Machinima
so I
because
was
they were touting they were going to be the first real YouTube network, right?
yeah.
And it's so funny you bring that up. I had lots of experience from a brand marketing side, spending shit tons of money with these places.
Well, I believe I signed up with them, I think, in January of 2011. So I was one of their first content creators. And then, and I wasn't a gamer. I was a guy that fucking yelled in the bathroom, you know, but I was getting views and people loved it. And they're like, who the fuck is this guy? Well, they brought me in and another content creator named Sky John, who goes by Tipsy Bartender. And this is the first time him and I met. And we're still friends today. Tipsy Bartender's a Jamaican guy who does these crazy fucking drinks all over Instagram and TikTok. So we're both OG. There's a lot of OG folks, by the way, that are
Yeah,
also in the crypto space I'm friends with, like Tazon Day, Las Vegas Barbie. And it's like, it feels like YouTube 2.0 for us.
that's awesome.
But put it simply, so you can use the restroom, I was on both sides of this conversation. And I think the thing that really made it clear to me is, hey, this is not going to be a YouTube conversation anymore. This is about, we're going to have to really change the way we think, because now what would happen if someone, a content creator, got 1 million followers on Twitter and made Twitter content? And I started
Yeah,
asking these questions back in 2011.
yeah,
And people thought I was fucking crazy. They're like, no, it's YouTube. There's no ad revenue model. I'm like, who gives a shit? If you got enough people following you, you make your fucking money.
oh,
And
absolutely.
and I was fighting with people in the industry about this, and people call me nuts and crazy. I literally had a news article written about me. It's no longer online, but they wrote it. They said, doom and gloom. Zack James said, if you don't get off YouTube and expand to other platforms, you're going to lose your career. And this was 2012,
Yeah,
I think. Yeah, 2013. And I was in the back room saying, hey, you know what happens when people have influence? And then that's where the word influencer started coming from.
right, right.
And that really, it's much bigger than YouTube. It was really about everything in this industry.
Yeah, in your thought process there, like forward thinking, obviously thinking different than everyone is. Did part of that stem from like if YouTube went away, you were screwed,
Yeah.
right? And so you're now your content, you're making this awesome content, but you have no distribution network. Was that kind of the thought?
Well, there was that, but then I started to realize, I started to mention this, and then Vine popped up. And think about it. Who made the most money in the world? The fucking Vine stars really did. They made more money than YouTubers did, and Vine didn't have an advertising platform.
Right.
How did Logan Paul and Jake Paul and all these other Vine stars make more money than people for a long time? They were richer than Shane Dawson for a long time. because they had more influence.
Mm-hmm.
That proved it right there. And then we realized at any point in time, anything could pop up, and
Yeah.
YouTube should just be part of your resume.
Right. Right. And so, as far as the content creation and animation, are you animating most of this? Do you have a team? What does that look like? You've built your own art team?
Yeah. So what I do is I'm a producer.
Yeah.
I am a creative at heart. But I'm also a producer, and it gets a little tricky from a business creative balance. But I try my best. And what I do is I work with a team of people.
Yeah.
So I'll work with like YouTube animators, voice actors. I'll work with artists around the world. And what I do is I scale up and down by projects.
Yeah.
So I have a creativeness. I try to process and digest as much as I can and be as, because I think to be a good producer, you really got to understand the creative process, but you
Yeah.
also got to let people be as creative as possible, but you also got to achieve a goal. And
Yes.
so you try to bring everybody together. And it's like, again, a puzzle. How do I bring in a YouTube animator and a YouTube voice actor
Yep.
and then get someone to do sound design? And how do I build a YouTube channel around that?
Yeah, you're really a creative project manager is what it boils down to, and you're making sure that all the right pieces are in place to make a very quality product, which you have done. Uh, that's interesting to say. There's a last random question.
Mm-hmm.
How so? You knew, and you were early on to all these YouTubers. How did Mr. Beast become Mr. Beast with your knowledge? What was the secret sauce there? Was it grit, determination?
So I actually knew the guy. I'm friends with the guy that gave him his like first sponsorship
Mm-hmm.
that led to Mr. Beast making his videos. He's like, hey, I want this money and I'm going to give it away. So I was speaking with this guy about sponsorship. And when I do sponsorships for any of my content, I become friends with the people that are giving me money.
Yeah.
I'm like, yo, you're going to give me money. Let's become friends. And so this dude was telling me, he's like, hey, we're in New York City. And he's like, hey, so, you've heard of this guy named Mr. Beast. I'm like, I don't think so. Maybe a little bit. And he's like, yeah, he's done like these videos. And you kind of heard about him. Like he was making these couple of random videos that kind of take off. But he seemed genuine. So people, just kind of took extra notice of him because of that. And then he's like, yeah, he asked us for a sponsorship for money. And we want to, he just gives it away. What do you think of that? I'm like, well, are you getting installs? Are you getting views? He's like, yeah. I'm like, just let the fucker do it.
Yeah.
He's like, well, what's in it for him? I don't understand. I'm like, you don't need to understand. He's getting you views. If he's taking $10,000 from you as a sponsorship and gives it away, keep fucking doing that.
Yeah.
Do it. It's big. I'm telling you right now, if I could do that, I would do it, but it doesn't fit my fucking Yo Mama format. I can't. How's an animated cartoon going to do that? The
Right.
kid's doing it. Let the fucking kid do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's what it was. It's like people knew he was doing weird shit with money, but it wasn't like it was genuine.
Yeah.
And he wasn't doing it with homeless people, by the way. He was doing it with a pizza delivery guy. So it's easier to process and digest. That was another thing too. I told him, I was like, look, I normally hate this type of shit. I would never do anything like this. But the thing is, it's a pizza delivery guy. Who gives a fuck? It's not a homeless dude. It's not in bad taste. It's not in poor taste.
Yeah. Yeah. Which there was a lot of that. I mean, dude, I remember the beginning, like those bum fight videos. Like that was just so tough, very tough to watch. So what I'm hearing you say though is not all luck, but there was a little timing there. He found the right guy to get the sponsor, but he had a unique idea that could resonate.
Mhm.
And this is what I push too, is like, it's just being genuine.
Yeah.
Human connection. You watch those videos, you see that, you can see the impact. People want to be heard. They want to
Exactly.
be felt like they're being listened to deeply. And my
But you
brand
can't.
is wrapped around that because I do really think that's important. What
But
do
you
think about that?
you can't be weird about it. You can't be
Can't be weird about it.
can't
For
do that
sure.
homeless shit. You can't. You got. Look, if you're gonna do something good for people, you can't really film. And that's where Mr. Beast is in this weird spot now where people are like, well, why doesn't he just give away all of his money? Why is he making videos about it? Right.
Yeah.
So now he's kind of in the middle of this debate where back in the day when he first started, people were debating about the homeless thing, like
Yeah.
whether or not you give away money to the homeless and film it. And the guy is like, Jimmy's like, you know what? I'm going to give away the pizza delivery guy. Easier to digestible content. Now
Right.
the dude is like curing blindness for a lot of fucking people.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, that's a little, okay, feeding the homeless, the curing the blindness. Okay, Jesus, chill the fuck out.
Right.
You know, it's
Right.
like,
Yeah.
that's where he's now kind of, it's funny. He fixed the problem. He changed, he went about a content issue in the opposite direction, but now he's in the middle of a new content issue
Yeah.
because he's so
Yeah.
good at what he did.
Yeah. Yeah. And so before we take this break, looking back in this whole period of growing YouTube before you find Web3, what are what's the 2 to 3 major lessons learned?
From content creation on YouTube.
Yeah.
One, the algorithm always changes.
Mm-hmm.
2, you can grow a lot quicker than you realize, and if you're not growing, you need to fix your fucking shit because there's something you can fix.
Mm-hmm.
And 3, I wouldn't say it's a lesson, but it was something that agent taught me or told me once. I knew this person for a number of years
Yeah.
between companies. They said, Zach, very few people, once they hit their peak, very few people have a career 18 months later.
Ooh.
So if you've been, look, if you're going to do it for a decade, it's going to be multiple marathons.
Yeah.
And when you hit your peak and you go down for a bit, you gotta eat that shit for like maybe 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
And then things shift again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love that. Those are great insights. With that, let's take a break. You go get your wine. I'm gonna run to the bathroom quick. Everybody stick around. We're entertaining some people apparently because we got some people watching. And I really appreciate it, man. You've been so far just really insightful. So I cannot wait to hear the rest. I'll be right back.
Sounds good. So my gut instinct told me you were about to be back. I'm like, I'm gonna grab everything and bring it back with me because I'm moving a little slow, and here you are.
Look at this, man. Impeccable timing. Okay, so this has been a fascinating ride so far. Really, really insightful. Anything else you want to share about content creation, animation, building a YouTube presence before we get to Web3? And if not, we'll go straight into Web3.
I don't know. It's just not easy. It's not easy at all. It's it takes a lot of I don't know. It's not easy. So if you want to do animation, good fucking luck.
Yeah.
Good fucking luck. You know, and people that still do it, they're fucking awesome. For me, I'm kind of, you know, I've been doing it for so long. I think at this point, I don't want to be beholden to YouTube from an animation perspective. And there is like stuff I've been working on in like in a really cool way that I can't talk about, unfortunately. But when you have a cartoon that's been around for a decade, you think about how you can take that to the next level.
Right.
And what you're going to really do with that. And for me, I'm just excited to kind of create the Dragon Ball Z of Dragon Ball for our fans. So,
I love it.
You know, we have that multi-generational fan base, and I think people don't realize the power of cartoons. You know, people are like, why do you spend so much money on cartoons? Because it has a stronger ROI than a YouTube vlog.
Yeah, I love it.
People remember that shit. Yeah.
So, and you actually sparked one more question here.
Okay.
It's hard. It's really hard to build content consistently, to build a presence and grow it. What kept you going? Pure passion? You picked the right thing? You wanted to solve the puzzle? What was that?
I think sometimes you gotta have a mix of stubbornness, arrogance, and motivation and determination. I think sometimes, you know, it's funny. I always think I've had this discussion, and I'll condense it down with a psychologist friend of mine. And we talked about how sometimes a mental illness leads to success. You know, a lot of CEOs have mental illnesses. A lot of rich people have a mental illness.
Yep.
And mental illness is probably used, you know, we think of it as like, oh, you're sick. But no, it's just like you have a weird way that your brain works that it's not normal. Yep. But it can make you successful. And I think my autism, it's not a mental illness, but it's like a disability that kind of creates a certain hyperfocusness that creates a certain arrogance and stubbornness.
Yeah.
And, you know, your negatives can really lead to your positives if you make it your weapon.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you, following up with that, I hear this often. I'm interested in your thoughts here. There's a lot of people that have been on this show that say, hey, you got to be Cortez and burn the ships to be successful. You've got to put, you know, everything in the past. And if you don't do that, it's going to be hard to be successful. Or there are people that say hobbies can turn into very successful things and you don't have to burn the ships to get to where you want. What are your thoughts there?
8 billion people on this planet. World works in really weird ways. Universe is barely understood. I think my opinion doesn't matter. I think it's whatever works for you.
I love that. That's such great advice. And I think people need to hear that more because you are talked at and marketed to so many times of if you do this, you will be successful. Let's take the miracle morning, or if you wake up at 5 o'clock before everybody wakes up and you have this routine, that is the key to success, right? And it's just shoved down your throat. But I think the answer is exactly what you said. You have to find out what works for you. There's lots of different ways that you can go about it, but you can't just force a square peg in a round hole, right?
And that's part of being honest with yourself.
Yes, that's all part of self-awareness too. Are you a morning person? If you're not, don't force yourself to wake up at 5 a.m. and just be miserable, because being miserable does not create greatness. You need to be happy and excited about what you're doing. So I think that's awesome. So let's go into Web3 and hear that journey, because I
Let's
think
spark it. Can I spark it?
just spark it. Go for it, man.
Cool.
This is exactly what you need to do.
Shit,
Let her rip, baby.
I needed to pick it, but
I don't know. I think Elon's okay with this.
Oh, then I can move the camera.
No. I think it's fine. That's whatever.
I mean, he lets Andrew Tate say the N word.
Yeah.
I mean, like, chill the fuck out.
Yeah, Andrew Tate, man, that's a whole nother. Dude, people are excited about this situation. All right, so you let it rip. Take us into Web3 after literally letting it rip.
So I'm going to be straightforward.
Yeah.
I hate people that use buzzwords so much. And I really fucking hated the idea of Web3 and metaverse and all this shit, because I knew people were talking about it and were talking out of their ass.
Right.
They didn't know what the fuck they were talking about. They didn't know how to explain it. If you can't explain it to me like I'm a fucking 5-year-old,
yep,
then fuck off. This is nothing. Yeah. But there was one person,
baby.
Exactly. But there was one person that did bring it up to me. Somebody I consider a dear friend of mine.
Yeah.
They held a pretty high position at a large one of the big 5 multi-mega media companies in the world. I'm sure you can guess what that is. And they were a technology producer. They develop all their blockchain patents. They like their names on the patents that they have for their blockchain technology. And then he worked on the vice president. Like he was pretty hard fucking core, and he retired off of Bitcoin pretty early. I met this guy twice in 24 hours at 2 different parties through 2 different friend groups after coming back from like being in Sweden. So I'm flying high. I'm like, yo, I'm traveling the world, living my life, coming to LA. Let me hit up my friends. Yo, what's happening? And then I meet this guy. First time I meet him, he goes, what do you do for a living? I'm like, I play weed, and I think I did say this. I smoke weed and play Fortnite. And I almost said it the other way. He's like, oh, that's pretty cool. I'm like, yeah, I'm sure I'll see you around. He's like, yeah, I play, I play Fortnite. I'm like, cool. Meet him next day. He gets introduced to me through my other friend, our mutual friend, as the Bitcoin multi-millionaire who's retired. And I'm like, well, good to see you again. You still smoking weed and playing Fortnite? So we just kept it casual. And this is a guy who's so cool. One of my coolest friends. This is somebody who sometimes you kind of lose out of touch with for a couple months, but you connect and everything's Gucci. And we just played Fortnite, smoked weed. We're both single dudes talking about like what is it like dating and stuff, like really connecting and like living at the primes of our lives, before we started to like think about settling down. And so he got me into crypto. Already was into crypto, already had some things, but he made me invest heavily into crypto, which paid off. And then from there, he started to introduce the concept of Web3 to me. But again, it was like he's really hyper intelligent. And sometimes you got to dumb shit down.
Yes.
And then I eventually said, okay, you need to start dumbing some things down for me. And he explained it to me. And kind of fast forward on that story, I took a second look at Web3. I went and bought an NFT for research development purposes. I was like, okay, I need to know what this is. There's IP being made. Let me go buy one of these NFTs. So I bought an alien friend. And I went to a community event in LA. And I walk in. And I'm like, oh, it's not a bunch of crypto bros. There's a large variety of people here.
Yeah.
I feel more at home with this because I always make a joke, but white people disturb the shit out of me. They really freak me out. If I'm in a room and there's nothing but white people, it kind of like I didn't grow up this way type of thing.
I
But
mean, I have freckles and red hair.
well, I feel more comfortable with you. You're more of a minority than most people.
Gingers, man, they don't have souls, brother.
No. Yeah, so it's like I can, for have a humor and everything, but I felt more at home. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, this is really cool. It's not crypto bros. And I sit in line, I'm talking to this dude and his girlfriend. They came in from San Francisco. They drove down. Boom. I'm like, oh, you guys, okay, this is really cool. And then I look around and I realize the line goes past the bar. I'm like, where the fuck is this line going? Oh, it's for merch.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not standing in line for fucking merch. I want a goddamn drink.
Yeah.
But two, this is pretty fucking impressive. You all came here. None of you got a drink yet. You're all in line for merch for an NFT that you bought. What?
Yeah.
That was kind of cool. And it made me go, this is community meets IP.
Yes.
There's something else here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I got into it.
Nah, I love it. And that's exactly how I got into it too. Because a brand, like I told you, I was a brand marketing guy the whole time. I suck at investing, not really interested in investing. But there is a revolution in how you utilize community with brands for sure. And it's gonna be there's already been very beautiful instances, but I think there's so much more to grow. So that hooked you, right? That's actually how I got hooked too. What were the next steps? Because as you're going through this, what I'm interested in is, I think you manage a brand, the Yo Mama brand, right? That actually hates Web3 and NFTs, right? And you're now also in the Web3 NFT world. So talk to me about that dynamic and how you navigate those waters.
Well, the thing is, the world is pretty fucking whack, right? There's always weird shit going on.
Yeah.
And people, you cannot fault people for having an opinion or expression that is rooted in certain facts.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of vaporware, a lot of scams, and there was that whole emission problem.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to acknowledge that. But, you know, how many people told me YouTube was stupid compared to politics? I mean, how many people do you think I pissed off not going to those universities that
Right.
my parents were pretty fucking pissed.
Mm-hmm.
So I was used to pissing people off. But the thing is, I knew it was also right sometimes. That's where arrogance and stubbornness kind of comes in.
Yeah.
But you see things that people don't see. And so, yeah, I got flack. I lost like a few thousand fans. I had like some tweets made about me that got like 40,000 likes or shitting on me. But you know what? I realized, you guys don't like it. That's fine. I won't ever talk about it to you guys again, but I am going to fuck around with it as an arm of my business.
Right.
Because I do see something here. I got to think about the next 10 years. I got to think beyond YouTube because YouTube is way too centralized, in my opinion.
Oh, absolutely.
All these social media content websites are centralized. And the fact that finance is tied into this sector means that your numbers are worth a shit ton more money.
Yes.
That CPM, people don't realize that 1 million views on YouTube can mean a lot of different money metrics depending on what you're covering and who's advertising on your video. 1 million views could be $100 or it can be you can get pretty up there. You can hit 25,000.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because the types of advertisers that want to link up with your content, for sure. I think that's another thing that people don't think about, as it really is a business, and you need to think about, and this is, I think, where I struggle, right? Is I am passionate about what we do here. I'm passionate about genuine human connection. That necessarily doesn't sell all the time to the people and doesn't get all the views. So what do? Do I stop doing what I'm doing? I can't bring myself to do that. Can I get smarter about how I distribute my content? Absolutely. And that's the stuff that I need to work on. But I think the point that you made, people don't really realize that there's just so much that goes into it if you're trying to really monetize what you do.
Yeah, there is. And it's Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree. I don't really have
Yeah.
a follow-up
Yeah.
thought on that.
No, you don't have to follow up. So take us into what you're doing in Web3, why you're doing what you're doing, and what really excites you right now currently.
Okay, so basically I came in to want to make cartoons for projects in Web3, and a lot of people started having conversations, and then FTX happened, and
Yeah.
people lost their money.
Yeah.
And then other people didn't want to spend any money. So I came in as a project to be like, look, I want to build animation. I want to help people do animation. I really want to be like this animation studio Web3. Because that's to me felt like where I had a lot of passion in.
Yeah.
Because that's what I was doing at this time in terms of like public facing front forwardness. You know, animation is what the studio is. So that's what we're going to focus on. But the bear market happened, FTX happened, shitheads happen.
Yeah.
People try to pay me free mint happen. And I'm like, okay, fuck this.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of really dove in. Sometimes you have to kind of take a step back and you go, all right, I started this project, but luckily, in my case, I never did a full collection like I intended to. I kept it, I always planned to do it in stages. So if one stage did well, then I would execute my next stage. And I always executed my roadmap. But if at the end of that roadmap, we're not properly set up to take that next stage in our roadmap, we need to take a
Right.
step back and figure out what we're doing. And we're not going to mint this entire collection. Like people are doing 10K collections. You're like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm down to entertain that. But instead of doing 10K at once, let me do 333. And
Yeah.
then I'll do 666.
Yeah.
And then I'll slowly increase when I'm releasing. So I kind of tiptoe into it. But then I
Yeah.
realized this model that I had wasn't really going to work until like maybe the bull market happened. So I started to like really dig in because I knew AI was an important thing too. That
Mhm.
really was a big shift behind the scenes simultaneously. I mean, folks, crypto is one thing, Web3 is another thing. AI really was like, oh shit. It was like we saw something. I was in a meeting, I was presented some materials, and it was a oh shit moment. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is going to fuck your industry in about 18 months
Yep.
soon. You're going to start to feel the ramifications of it. And sure enough, animators are feeling it right now.
Yeah.
And it is changing the industry.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's
Talk to me about
yeah.
that. That's really interesting because you have an intimate knowledge about what it takes to create animation, and we're now eyeing down within the next couple of years AI to really make an impact. It's already making an impact. So what do you do to pivot in that situation when AI starts taking away skills that humans can do? What are your thoughts there?
My thoughts are if you care, I'm going to be honest with you. If you care enough about about AI, contact your political representative, make it clear to them. People don't want to do that. They want to bitch on Twitter. No, you contact your political representative. If you do AI, and there's a lot of people that utilize AI, I know a lot of animators that do, they will never tell a motherfucker. Never.
Mm,
It's told completely confidential. I mean,
yeah.
you gotta have all that stuff disclosed anyway in contracts and whatnot and projects.
Yeah.
So I know how they're using AI, but I also know how they're doing it in a way that it makes ethical sense. But on the same token, that word is pretty fucking heavy fire.
Right. Right.
Just like
So
crypto and NFTs and Web3.
So what are your thoughts on the future of it and how you ethically can use it?
I think if you could utilize it to see, I can't say it. I can't say it now. I think about it. Yeah, because if I say it, I'll probably give away some people's kind of systems and things of that
Right.
nature.
Okay.
What I can say is you can use it as a guide, as a tool, or even use it as a closed system. But if I gave specific examples, I'd be giving away
Yeah, that's totally
yeah
fine.
things. Yeah.
Uh, so you said AI is a part of your future, right? And it's something that you need to utilize as a tool, or do you think you can ignore that?
For me, I think of it more as I just gotta be aware of it.
Okay.
And my opinion about this doesn't matter, but
Right.
I continue to work with animators every day,
Yeah.
artists,
Yeah.
illustrators. I mean, fuck, how many projects am I working with now? It's kind of hard to keep track of, to be
Yeah.
honest with you. But I oversee a lot of creative initiatives, and that's what
Yep.
Anime Labs turned into was, hey, I'm just going to help out every project that makes sense in terms of content and social media. It doesn't have to just necessarily be animation.
Yeah.
And then it turned into working with influencers. And because of that, you come across a lot of talent that does utilize AI as kind of like a rough sketch to kind
Mhm.
of, or more so, they try to get through the approval process stage, concept stage with projects that are hiring them or
Yeah.
things of that nature. Um, so for me, it's kind of, I don't know. I don't have an opinion about it. You can't have
Yeah.
an opinion. You can only have an observation.
Yeah. That's
Eh,
totally fine. That's totally acceptable. And I know you don't want to get too detailed on this subject.
Yeah.
It's totally fine. So what I'm interested in then is it seems like you might have pivoted a couple times to get to what Anime Labs is currently.
Yeah.
Take us through that journey and why the pivots and then culminate. Well, actually, let me rewind. 2 minutes or less. What is Anime Labs? And what is it? What do you do?
Yeah, so Anime Labs is basically it's a Web3 content studio to an extent, but really what we do is we experiment. We work with projects on a case by case basis. They come in as a holder, and then I go in and dive into their project and understand what their goals and needs are.
Mhm,
Some people need creative help. Some people need social media and content strategy help.
mhm.
When it comes to influencers, look, I'm an influencer too, like on heavy shit. So we just trade information, and then ultimately it's become a network where people kind of plug and play into one another, and I just kind of help them between sponsorships, talent, influence, posts, anything to that nature.
Love it. That's awesome. So how did you get there, and what was the initial brainchild and the pivots you took to get to current state?
I think what it came down to is I was always very kind of humble. I think when
Mhm.
there's a lot of loud personalities in the space, you kind of take a step back and you're like, I want to watch, I want to look, I want to listen because I don't know who's going to be around, who's not going to be around.
Right.
I'd rather just slowly prove myself. Um, and funny enough, my girlfriend says I'm too humble. And so I kind of took that note to heart a little bit, respectfully. I'm like, you know what, fine, I'll start speaking up a little bit more about who I am. And
Right.
then suddenly it just kind of sparked a wildfire.
Mm.
It's like one
Mhm.
person heard and then everybody else heard. And then suddenly people just started to approach me left and right, like, hey, I need help. I need help. Can you help me? And
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, you know what? This is what I can do. Just come in as a
Yeah.
holder and I'll work with you and figure out
Yeah.
how we can make this happen.
And you said something really interesting there, though, is you maybe not intentionally when you were first starting this, but you used your YouTube experience to go to that next stage, right? And I'm sure you have a bunch of other things, but that's kind of how it worked. And you being a little humble there in the beginning, maybe it was to your detriment a little bit. And once people knew who you were and what you could do, that really started expanding your Web3 career. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, I think part of it was as a YouTuber, as somebody that had like that active fan base that
Yeah.
really hated NFTs and shit, I couldn't really talk about it as freely as I wanted to,
Yeah.
or I was really concerned about the crossover.
Yep.
Then people stopped getting pissed off, and now they're more pissed off about politics. So cool. No one cares about what I fuck with.
Right.
Um, that's great. And now I
Mhm.
can talk a little bit more freely about what I do. But I also had to kind of break that pattern and start talking about it. My girlfriend gave me that nudge.
Yeah, no, I love it. So let's do this, man. I mean, believe it or not, hour and 45 minutes. Been an incredible, magical conversation. I want to be respectful of your time. I'm interested. So I have one more question. It's a
Okay.
softball question that I always end with. But before that, we'll kind of I'd love to hear as much as you can share about the next 6 to 12 months of what your kind of content creation journey Animeme Labs. What does that look like to you? Anything that you can share? Ah, come on. One little piece of alpha. That is the right answer, by the way. The right answer is no, I don't have anything to share.
Yeah, I can't. There's a lot of stuff I just can't talk about.
All right. So how about this? Another angle. What
Okay.
are you excited about to see in Web3 in the future? What excites you about this space?
I can't talk about that either because I know some pretty cool shit.
Okay.
And I just, if I tell you what I'm excited about, I give that away too.
All right. Well then, we won't talk about the future here. I think looking back, you have such a wealth of knowledge, and I feel and I hear a lot of this success comes from your passion about figuring out puzzles, learning from everything, growing, right? Uh, what would be your advice for someone coming into Web3 that's really interested and sees the possibilities of community and the things that we're talking about? What would your advice to that new person be? Is it go straight to crypto Twitter, but don't pay attention to anyone? Find the people that you think are real and do what they're doing. Figure out what category of Web3 you're interested in and double down on it. What are your thoughts there?
I mean, I guess it depends on the goal, right? Like, are they trying to become an influencer and make content, or are they trying to make money in the space as a trader? That's where my brain kind of goes.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you this, the biggest thing that I could say is if you're good at what the fuck you do and you're willing to help people and you're really fucking good at it, I find that giving people an hour of my time saves them like 3 months of work. It's like, yo, this is just shit you really should be focusing on.
Yeah.
This is like what's really going to matter. And like, that's how I help. But other people help out. I've seen artists come in and just start doing free art edits. And now they get like fucking incredible opportunities all in a span of a year.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how the market sentiment is. There's opportunities to be made and make money. But be really good at it. 2, be willing to kind of do it for free.
Yeah.
And 3, take the money when people want to give it to you. And then suddenly 4, you're good. It just works.
Yeah, and I think that's great advice, right? I think a lot of times, how I got into it, right? The first probably 10 mod jobs I had, I did everything for free. But what happened is, what I didn't know was happening at the time, it built that community and network that we talked about. And one of the people, his name was Christian, led me on to this super hype project, which was called Hate Beast back in 2021. And I was an original mod because of him, because he told me to go to the Discord at the right time. And I was the only one that actually had a career at that time. I felt like, because I was dealing with a lot of, no offense to 20-year-olds, but there was a lot of 20-year-olds at that moment in time. And I went into the Discord and DM'd Digimental right away. And I said, I'm the mod for you. And he said, yeah, sounds good. Here you go. So that networking and that doing things for free and just taking chances on whatever it is. But to your point, find something that you're really good at. I think this has come up multiple times in this conversation. And I think it's something that people need to hear more. At some point, you have to have the self-awareness that what you're trying to be, whether it be an influencer or the best artist in the world, and you're just not that good at it, you have to have the good conversation with yourself to say, maybe I should try something else. Because I'm firmly convinced everybody has a superpower, but I'm also firmly convinced people go their entire lives and never find out what that is. And that is the challenge and the journey that I think most people should be thinking about in this space too. No one's being, there are very few people that are actually doubling down on a meme coin and becoming a millionaire the next night. That very rarely happens, even though Twitter tells you it happens all the time. A lot of that stuff is fake. So if investing's really it for you, double down on that and find the right people. But there's so many things that this space offers, and I think you need to start figuring out what your superpower is and how it aligns. So I love that. I love that thought, and I love the insight there. Any other final things that you want to talk about Web3 before we close this out?
Well, I guess like you asked me if I was excited about anything like 6 to 12 months from now. Could I do like 6 to 12 weeks?
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, no, I would say I'm most excited to basically just continue to work with different projects in the space.
Yeah.
I find that now that the bull market is starting to happen, you're seeing a wave of projects and brands and collectives that have really built through a bear. Yeah. And they actually have revenue streams, or they're on the verge of a revenue stream.
Yep.
And you're seeing the making of all these different businesses. So those are like the projects that we've been kind of like building up and working with. And I always get like hands-on dirty with those projects. And I would say like in the next 6 to 12 weeks, I'm really excited to announce what those projects look like, what those projects really are. You know, some of them, others, not so much, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I know a handful, so for sure. No, I think that's a great way of saying it without not revealing too much. So with that being said, man, we're coming to an end. One final question that I asked every guest. How do you think the midlife crisis experience with Mikey G went tonight? Is it something that you expected? Feedback for me. Love to hear your thoughts.
I would say the feedback I would give myself is sometimes you kind of present something and I don't know if you're asking me a question, but then you pause and then I don't hear anything. And then I'm like, oh shit, it's my turn to speak. Okay, am I supposed to tell a story? Tell me about your childhood. Well, here's my childhood condensed down into like however many minutes it can. And then you ask me a question and then I'm like, oh shit. So you're in storytelling mode, but then you're like, oh wait, now it's question mode.
Yeah.
And then question mode, you're like, how quick should I answer the question? So when you told me, hey, in 2 minutes, I'm like, oh yeah, if you give me a time limit on questions, I'll answer that shit quick.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is there was times where the open-endedness threw you off a little bit.
Yeah, because I didn't know how open-ended to be.
Right. Yeah. And that's valid feedback and I appreciate it. But I think you did a really, really good job. I mean, I got who you were as a person, as the way that you think, and really good vision on how you kind of progressed through your childhood. And the Boys State story was fantastic. And then us talking about YouTube and now to where you are. I understand who you are, and I understand good chunk of why you think the way you think. So I think you did a fantastic job, but I will take that feedback to heart because there is, I think, just different mindsets on how you talk and flow through a conversation. So appreciate that, man.
Oh, no, totally. I mean, it's been fun, dude. It's been fun. I just want to make sure that I could be a better guest.
No, you crushed it, man. It was fantastic. And I think my closing comments are this. I can tell you're an insanely intelligent guy. I actually am really impressed that you are as intelligent and hardworking as you are, but still want to do good. And I appreciate that from you because there's a lot of people that will take that power and actually use it for not great things. I really appreciated your insight about your benefit. Your good benefit actually is getting people to think more. Everything is not black and white. I thought that was an awesome insight, and I think people need to hear that more. In addition, I can tell that you're just a fun guy. I would love to hang out. I think you live in LA. I live in northern San Diego. So we're going to have to hang out and just have some craft beers. I can't do the whole ripping that you just did because I just smoke doesn't really work with me. But I think we could have some fun times just chatting in real life. Alpha, right? That is in LA and Mission Venice Beach.
Yeah. IRL Alpha.
Yeah, IRL Alpha. Yeah. And then finally, man, you got a friend. You got a new friend in Web3, whole different audience, lots of different founders I'm connected with too as well. I know you like to help out projects, and I really want to grow, get to know you more, and continue to make magic. I think Tyler and I dubbed this on his podcast. Unfortunately, nice guys usually finish last. But I feel like if we get enough nice guys together, we really can make an impact in Web3. And I'd love for you to be one of those as we continue to grow. So thank you so much for your time, man. Incredible, fascinating conversation. And it was amazing. So thank you so much, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it as well.
And with that being said, people, you just went through the Mikey G Midlife Crisis podcast experience with the man, the myth, the legend, Zack James. We will be putting this up on YouTube for everybody to watch. We love you all. Next podcast, Wednesday morning with Mr. H, Midlife Crisis, Mikey G, and Zack are out.